Welcome back, Endgame community, and of course, a special welcome to our new viewers. Thanks for joining us. We're going to go through the first 3 rounds of a mock draft, a couple of weeks removed now from the 2021 NFL draft, to see what has changed in terms of ADP. Chris and I are going to run through it pick by pick and explain our thought process briefly behind each one. So let's get right to it. No need to keep you in suspense. Number 1 pick it's still Christian McCaffrey. Look, nothing has changed here. Do we care that Chuba Hubbard has been taken by the Carolina Panthers? No, we don't. It doesn't matter, Chris. This moves the needle not one bit.
Not one bit. Not only that, he was drafted in the 4th round. It wasn't like he was picked in the 1st or 2nd round. I mean, yeah, I'm sure they looked at him and said, okay, yeah, we have some insurance for Christian McCaffrey now. And I know there's talk about them lessening his workload, but I mean, even if they lessen his workload by 5 to 6 touches a week, he's still going to get the most touches of anybody in the league. So definitely he's number 1. And then number 2, I think he's the only guy who could potentially make a case, in my opinion, for overtaking Christian McCaffrey in 2021. And that's Dalvin Cook. We know he's another guy who gets every touch on his team. And the Vikings definitely improved that offensive line here in the offseason. So, it's always good when the running back has a better offensive line. So Christian McCaffrey definitely number 1. But for me, Dalvin Cook clearly number 2.
Yeah, no doubt number 2. Like you said, I mean, it would take something, groundbreaking for us to move CMC out of that number 1 spot. I don't think it's going to happen. It would have to be something health related. But Cook, I mean, that's a solid number 2 pick as you can get. You should be pretty happy if you still wind up with a 2 pick. All right, for number 3, I think we have to go with Saquon Barkley. Only thing I would have loved to see is the Giants address maybe their offensive line a little bit more in the draft and not take a receiver. Don't really know what they're trying to do in accumulating all these pass catching options. Now there's Kelvin Benjamin there just for fun. But still, Barkley has the highest ceiling out of anybody who's left. So Barkley it is.
Yeah, I agree. It would have been nice to see them upgrade that offensive line, but we know he's another guy, 20 plus touches involved in the passing game. Just a monster in all formats. And then this guy doesn't catch passes, but he's still a monster in all formats. And I think he's still got to go in the top 4, even though there are some concerns about, age and potentially breaking down. And that's Derrick Henry. But he could just be, that freak of nature, outlier guy who just, racks up 300 plus carries every year and doesn't break down. So I think, this guy leads the league in rushing and rushing touchdowns every year. I think he's still solidly in the top 5. I got him at number 4.
Yeah, we were clearly too low on him last year by not having him in the top 3. Of course, all those injuries were going to happen, but still, we're not going to make that mistake again. Look, if it happens and he breaks down, it's bad luck. It could happen to anyone. But yeah, Derrick Henry, you have to go with him. You can't let him slip past 4. Now, number 5 is where it gets interesting. There's a lot of options. It's still too early to go receiver, especially with the questions surrounding the Packers these days and Devontae Adams. Travis Kelce was a league winner in a lot of places, but it's too early for him too, unless you're in a tight end premium. So we're looking at the top running back available. Look, to me, and I know you pretty much agree with this, I think it's Ezekiel Elliott, because he was on pace to be a top 5 back last year when Dak Prescott was healthy. Everything is pointing up for that offense. So to me, he's got the pass catching ability. He's a 3-down back. I'm not worried about Tony Pollard. Okay, and you shouldn't be either. So at 5, I go with Zeke.
Yeah, and I've started to see him creeping up in my best ball drafts. I used to get him sometimes with my 12th pick at the end of the 1st round, definitely in that 8 to 10 range. Now I'm starting to see him go 5, 6. So people are starting to catch on that, oh yeah, this guy's still really good. And he was really good with Dak last year. I agree. He's number 5. And then it's crazy to think this guy is number 6, but we've got concerns, right, about his quarterback play going forward, because we know it's not going to be Drew Brees. He averaged 8 targets per game with Drew Brees last year. We know he's not going to get that level of volume, but still, great player, great running back. That's Alvin Kamara. I think 6 is just right for him. Now, it's crazy to think that the number 1 fantasy player, the MVP last year, is slotting in at number 6, but without Drew Brees, his passing work is going to take a hit. 6 seems just about right for him.
Yeah, we can't ding him too much. I mean, just the fact that he's not a top 3 pick, it tells you that we're down compared to last year, because again, talk about a league winner. It was Kamara for sure, but we really don't know what that Saints offense exactly is going to look like. Now, here's where you could go all sorts of different ways. Personally, if I'm picking at this spot in the middle of round 1, it still feels a little early for me to take a receiver, because we know the running back run is going to continue. Which running back do you take at this point? Well, that's a matter of opinion. I know some people think it's a little too early for Jonathan Taylor. I don't, because I really think he's one of the few backs left who is going to be the workhorse for his team. Still a good offensive line. And so I think that he's a guy that you can feel pretty good about. There's some questions, of course. Maybe the schedule is a little soft down the stretch there. Maybe we're not going to see that Jonathan Taylor all season. It's okay if we don't. We're still going to see a guy who's a solid top 10 running back. So Taylor for me.
Yeah, I know this is about where he's going. I gotta say Taylor's a fade for me. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I just feel like people are a little too high on him based off of a few monster games. But this is about where he's going. So, nothing wrong with that pick. It's not a reach or anything. It's just, like you said, it's just a matter of opinion. We're getting to that point where, there's no clear cut running back guys to go here. There's a lot of guys kind of in that same tier. So, and then I'm going to go with Travis Kelce here at the 8. I think he's going to be a first rounder this year. He's a first rounder in best ball drafts right now. He was the number 6 overall scorer outside of QBs last year. So it wasn't like he was just an advantage at the tight end position. He was an advantage anywhere, right? I mean, he was just a beast. No reason to think that changes. The Chiefs didn't do anything in that passing room. They didn't improve it at all. It should still be, Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce gobbling up all the targets. So I'm not, usually a tight end early guy, but I think for Travis Kelce, first round is worth it.
Definitely. I mean, he has to be a first rounder, no doubt. The only thing is when you do take a tight end early, especially in the first round, that affects your roster construction the rest of the way. So you just kind of have to be mindful of not letting guys fall too far in each position. So you don't wind up with somebody, for example, if you wait on wide receiver, you don't have a wide receiver 1 as like Tyler Lockett or something like that. So then again, Travis Kelce is basically a wide receiver 1. So keep that in mind. Now, this is where you can see a lot more differentiation. 9 spot. Look, if you do the mock drafts, or if you have watched our mock drafts, we do them 3 times a week right here on the end game. You watch 5 different mocks at this spot, you might see 5 different players taken. And so this is where I'm going to go with my boy, and that is Cam Akers. Yes, I think he's a top 10 running back. Will he fall, to me in the second round at this spot? Maybe. We've seen that happen too. So this is where you really don't know what's going to go on. You got to take the player that you believe in. And so for me, it's Akers. He's a guy I think could be a 3-down back. You saw down the stretch, he was the only back. Darrell Henderson became non-existent. So to me, Akers is the guy.
I mean, it seems like he should be the guy. Malcolm Brown is gone now. Like you said, he was the 3-down back down the stretch. And unlike Jonathan Taylor, he had some really nice games. Even in the playoffs, he had some really nice games. Again, a little too high for me, but like splitting hairs here. There's like 4 or 5 running backs that are kind of all in the same tier for me. So yeah, I'm not gonna hate on that pick. And then this is my guy, who I definitely think should be going in the first round. And I think he's starting to get some first round love now, and that's Austin Eckler. Look, this guy finished as RB4 in 2019, the year Melvin Gordon held out for, the first 4 games and then came back. And then last year, he was RB7. If you just look at the healthy games he played with Justin Herbert, he was the RB7. He's a PPR monster, locked in for 80 plus catches. And the Chargers also upgraded that offensive line and didn't do anything in that running back room. So he could even see, 150 to 200 carries. And if he does, he's going to easily be a top 10 running back in PPR leagues.
Cannot disagree with anything that you just said. Look, Eckler is definitely a safe play. They didn't do anything to show that they're worried about him getting a certain number of touches health-wise. He's the guy there. And so we talk about Akers versus Eckler. Honestly, those are the 2 guys I wrestle with at that spot, 9-10. And either way, it's more of a kind of a floor versus ceiling debate, right? Eckler is definitely a safe pick, maybe a smarter pick in the first round because you want that floor. You want a guy who's not going to lose you your league in the first round. So speaking of, I think this is a fairly solid pick here. We go with Aaron Jones. We've seen what he can do. With Jamal Williams out of the picture, there could be more touches in store for him. Look, we know he's going to be the pass catching back because behind him is just A.J. Dillon. He's not a pass catching back at all. So I feel pretty good. I'm not honestly too worried about the whole Rodgers situation. You say, well, why not take Devontae Adams? You know what? there's not a big separation for me between the receivers that are left. I don't think Devontae Adams will score as many touchdowns as he did last year. In fact, I know he won't. Just like Aaron Rodgers is not going to throw as many, which means more work for Aaron Jones. So I really like him as a solid RB1.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, him, Akers, Eckler, and then the other running back, Nick Chubb, are all in the same tier for me. But before I take Nick Chubb here, I'm going to start because I don't want our first round to have no wide receivers. So I am going to take a wide receiver here. I'm going to take Devontae Adams. I know there's people that are scared about Aaron Rodgers being traded. Look, I remember when Russell Wilson was going to get traded earlier in the season. I remember when Deshaun Watson was going to get traded earlier in the offseason, I should say. And here we are. Neither one has been traded. It's not easy to trade these franchise QBs, not to mention the Packers. They don't want to trade Aaron Rodgers. They know if they trade Aaron Rodgers, they're now a 4 or 5 win team at best. Why would they want to do that? Devontae Adams has been falling into the second round, and I think everybody who's been getting Devontae Adams in the second round is just going to hit a gold mine in 2021. And then I am going to pair him with who I said, Nick Chubb. I get that Nick Chubb is normally a first rounder, and we're splitting hairs here. I took Adams first and then Chubb. You could reverse the order; he's still a first rounder, but I do think Nick Chubb is kind of the end of those elite running back tier. So getting that Adams, Nick Chubb start here at the end seems pretty good.
And that is exactly right, because once you get to this point, usually you see by the end of the first round, that first real big tier, you could call it 2 tiers, maybe those first 3 guys, 4 guys, and then the rest of the running backs. But now we see a little bit of a drop off, or at least some questions with the running backs that are remaining. These are your RB2 types, high-end RB2s, but still RB2 nonetheless. So let's start going on a receiver run here. For this spot, we're going to play it safe and go with Tyreek Hill. There's no question about his involvement, his target share, his production. Yeah, it's a little more boom bust from game to game, but don't you like sometimes that volatility? Don't you want the guy who could score 3 touchdowns in a game, who could get 200 yards in a game? Sometimes that's just as important as having that, consistency. So Tyreek Hill here. Chris, I took him so you didn't have to also.
Well, I appreciate that, but no, I agree. He's the consensus number 2, and you're right. He gives you week winning upside. Like literally, he can win your week. 2 or 3 times a year, he can literally win you a week, and that's just huge. So definitely number 2. And then the guy, I still have this guy at number 3 as far as wide receivers go, but AJ Brown is creeping up on him. But I still have Diggs just ahead of AJ Brown. I know everybody's excited for AJ Brown's target share, but Stephon Diggs in a much pass-friendlier offense connected to Josh Allen. I mean, he's only competing with Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders. He just should still be the number 1 guy there. I still have Diggs at number 3.
Yeah, and there's no reason not to. Again, you get the guy who actually led the league with targets and then receptions. He was solid as you can get. No complaints there. And a lot of people are high on AJ Brown, think he's going to all of a sudden be the wide receiver 1. Look, maybe he is. But I'd like to see it first. That offense is still running through Derrick Henry. And with no other options really threaten, his target share, yeah, he might get more targets, but he also might draw more coverage. I'm going to take right now the guy who is my wide receiver 1 projected for this coming season. That's my boy, DK Metcalf. Look, if you watched anything that we've ever recorded, I love me some DK Metcalf. And if I could pick a team, it would be this team, the Akers Metcalf. That's my dream start here. So DK Metcalf is the wide receiver right here.
This is your team right here. Akers Metcalf. That is your dream team. That would be your perfect team. You would enjoy rolling this team out every single week. And now this team here did start tight end, but I don't really love any of the running backs on the board right now. And like I said, I have AJ Brown as a wide receiver 4, just ahead of Hopkins and Metcalf. So even though this team did start with tight end, I think they're okay going to wide receiver here. They could potentially have the number 1 tight end and the number 1 wide receiver in 2021. That'll make up for not having, an elite running back for sure.
Yeah, we have to have at least 1 0 RB squad on here somewhere, right? We're only going 3 rounds deep, so we won't see how it plays out. But I think that's fine. And to continue with the receivers here, not because we need to, but because at this point, look, Jonathan Taylor, I like the pick in the first round, but maybe we need somebody a little safer here in round 2. Let's go with DeAndre Hopkins, who again could lead the league in receptions and targets and yards and touchdowns. I mean, I know it was a little inconsistent his first year in Arizona, but we know he's still a target hog there. And that offense, well, maybe it'll just click a little bit better now that they have some new parts in place. A little bit more chemistry between him and Kyler Murray. So we're going with right here.
Yeah, no, love that. Love him paired with Taylor. And then normally I would go wide receiver here, but I want to kind of do this mock a little bit closer to, how the rankings are going to be for people watching this so they kind of understand what it's going to be. So I'm going to go with a running back that I'm not as high on as everybody else, but I get it. I get his upside and everything. And that's Antonio Gibson of my football team. I am a little worried that with Ryan Fitzpatrick, there won't be as many dump offs to the running backs and things like that. But at the same time, maybe he'll make up for it because they're going to be on a better offense and they have an elite defense, which means they should be, ahead of the game most of the time, positive game script. So Antonio Gibson in the mid-second seems okay to me.
Oh, yeah. I think Gibson is clearly the next running back off the board. If he was still available, I would have taken him next pick. But to me, not too worried. Look, I know he wasn't a huge pass catching threat last year, with McKissick doing that heavy lifting, but Gibson is definitely going to be the guy there. So regardless of who's at quarterback. And so in that case, we'll pivot here and go to a wide receiver. Still plenty of really good wide receivers on the board. I think it has to be Justin Jefferson based on what he did last year. I mean, there's really no concerns, and that offense honestly could be better because they added 2 really strong offensive linemen in the draft. I know a lot of people might consider somebody like Calvin Ridley, but Julio Jones did play a lot of last year. So I feel like, that's a little bit more questionable than having Jefferson here. So I will definitely go with JJ at this point.
Yeah, kind of like what we talked about in the first round where we were at the end of the running back tier. I feel like we're at the end of that wide receiver tier. And there's 4 or 5 guys in this tier who I kind of all like equally. And I am going to go with Calvin Ridley here, who I do have next. Let's not forget this guy, even when Julio was healthy early in the year, this guy was the number 1 PPR wide receiver through the first 3 weeks. He was still a top 7 PPR wide receiver last year. I don't think it matters if Julio's healthy, if Julio's injured, or if Julio gets traded. I don't think it matters. I think Ridley has ascended to the Falcons, number 1, Matt Ryan's number 1 consistent target. So I have no problem taking him here in the second round.
Yeah, unless Kyle Pitts comes in and just takes all the targets, right? That's what a lot of people seem to think. All right, so let's switch it up here. George Kittle is still on the board. How soon is too soon to pull the trigger on him? I don't think it really matters because, again, last year was just kind of a lost year due to injury. That offense was a mess. If Trey Lance is the real deal, then this could be a steal here. You might get a guy that has just as many yards as Travis Kelce. So late second round, I think that's a good time to pull the trigger and get a high-end tight end because just having that advantage at a position that drops off really precipitously after those first 3 guys, it's a huge win.
Yeah, I agree. Getting one of the big 3 tight ends is such a huge advantage in single tight end leagues, which most leagues are because no tight end hasn't quite caught on yet, but we're trying to change that. We will one day change that. Like you said, no tight end will be the new PPR. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. And let's continue here with these wide receivers because, like I said, there's 4 or 5 that I think are in a similar tier here. And I have them all ahead of any of the running backs on the board. I just think they all have more upside. And I'm going to start with Michael Thomas, kind of a forgotten guy this year. I mean, this guy went from the consensus number 1 wide receiver last year, first round pick, to barely inside the top 10 this year. And he battled injury, but he also got terrible QB play. And I don't think it matters if it's Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill because we know Jameis Winston is a gunslinger. He will force feed his wide receivers. And Taysom Hill last year, he force fed Michael Thomas in the games they played. And the Saints don't really have any other wide receivers beyond Michael Thomas. So I think he's easily a top 10 wide receiver this year in all formats. And he's kind of being slept on.
Yeah, a lot of times we're seeing Michael Thomas go in the 3rd round, sometimes even the middle of the 3rd round. I mean, at that point, he's a steal here. I really don't think there's too many concerns there. The injuries really bothered him most of the time. It probably doesn't really matter who the quarterback is either. Just like with Allen Robinson, we know it doesn't matter who the quarterback is. And if anything, he should get an upgrade. Andy Dalton is just fine. Look, he actually did some good to Amari Cooper and those receivers down the stretch, at least some games. And so when Justin Fields takes over, just imagine. So Allen Robinson is the pick here. And then finishing the turn. So Chris, you said this before, when you start number 1, that's a huge advantage. We know that. When you get a guy like CMC, it's not just an RB1, that's like RB 1.5, right? It's like 1.5 running backs because of the massive advantage he gives you point-wise week to week. we can definitely wait on our second running back, and we will because there's still a solid group of receivers left. There's still 2 or 3 guys I would take here. I think the one we're going to pick is Keenan Allen because, again, as safe as you can get in PPR formats, you know he is good week to week. So we got A-Rob, we got Keenan Allen, and McCaffrey. That's a pretty good start.
Yeah, I agree. And then I'm going to take there's one receiver I have in that final tier, but I'm going to leave him for the team in the next pick who already has a tight end. And I'm going to take the last remaining elite tight end here, and that's Darren Waller. Again, like I said, I think it's just so important in your single tight end leagues that you get one of those elite tight ends, because otherwise you're just at such a disadvantage and you're trying to stream every week and it's super frustrating. So really like getting one of these 3 tight ends if I can in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so you know what's going to come next. It's your boy Scary Terry, because again, these top 3 picks, you get a guy like Dalvin Cook, Saquon Barkley, you can afford to wait on your second running back. So we got a receiver, we got a solid tight end here. So Terry McLaurin is the next pick.
Yeah, now this is where it to me, and yes, I agree, Terry McLaurin is the next pick for sure, but this is where you can go either way, because I feel like when you look at the running backs on the board, there's some really good running back values, but there's also some really good wide receiver value. But I'm going to go with the running back here. I know I'm not quite as high on him as a lot of people, but I see the potential. I see the upside, and that's DeAndre Swift. Falling to the 3rd round, I think is really good value. So pairing him with Derrick Henry, that's a great 1-2 punch at running back. So DeAndre Swift's a pick at that point.
So you're coming around. I'm higher on Swift than most people. I don't think the Lions offense will be all that good, but I think that might work into his advantage because he's going to catch so many dump offs. He's going to be their leading receiver and rusher. How about that? Speaking of teams that don't quite know what they're doing on offense, look, the Bengals, everyone's excited about the receivers, but it will still be Joe Mixon running the show there. They're going to try to give him as much work as possible. We know this. So I like Mixon as a 3-down back. I actually believe when they say that he's not going to be off the field too much. So I think this is a really good spot to take a guy who absolutely still has the potential to be a top 10 fantasy running back.
Yeah. Well, if you watched our Royal Rumble video, I actually had Joe Mixon ahead of DeAndre Swift. And I would, in a vacuum, pick Joe Mixon over DeAndre Swift. I just felt like, based on where DeAndre Swift goes, that was more of a value. So I agree. Joe Mixon the next pick. And now we got a team here that started running back. And this is an interesting spot for wide receivers. You have Julio Jones, who, if he stays healthy, we know is a top 5, top 10 wide receiver. You have Mike Evans, who was a beast with Tom Brady last year. You have guys like Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, who we know both were really good with Dak Prescott. Some people think CeeDee Lamb's going to take that leap over Cooper, but I'm going to go with Evans here. He's usually my next wide receiver off the board. But I really don't have any fault of if anybody takes any of those guys. But for me, Mike Evans is the next one. I mean, he was by far the highest targeted receiver for the Bucs. He was a guy Brady looked for in the end zone. So I like Evans heading into year 8 now, which is crazy to think that he's heading into year 8, but should just be another 1,000-yard season for Mike Evans.
Yeah, I really don't think there are any more questions regarding Mike Evans. Look, at this point last year, Chris Godwin was going in this spot. We were expecting a breakout. Didn't happen. Evans is still the guy there. He's the top target in Tampa, definitely a 3rd-round pick. I would probably wait on Godwin. I'm not going to take him at least this round. I'd wait on him till round 4. But I'm going to go with Julio. Look, I'm not too concerned. He didn't have a severe injury, just kind of banged up all year. He'll be back. He'll be fine. He is still an elite receiver. This is a good spot to take him.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, it's worth a gamble in the 3rd round because, like I said, you're talking about a top 5, top 10 receiver when he's healthy. And now this team, could be a 0 RB team, but there's some running back value here. And I think this guy, last year this guy was a 1st rounder when he was drafted by the Chiefs, and he disappointed for a 1st rounder. But I think he rebounds this year. 3rd round, I think, is great value for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Not to mention the Chiefs, whose offensive line pretty much lost them the Super Bowl, looked at it and did everything they could to improve the offensive line. They signed a bunch of guys, drafted guys. They did everything they could. That offensive line should be better. So for me, Clyde Edwards-Helaire here is a great value.
Oh man, I'm really shocked you dismantled that 0 RB build. That's just That's shocking, beyond shocking, but we're going for value, right? We're trying to break down what really is going to happen, where we think these guys should go. On my team here, look, I'll take a guy that I don't think is going to be a breakout star this year, but I think he's a really solid RB2. And J.K. Dobbins, yeah, there's a little bit of a cap on his output just because, of course, Lamar Jackson is going to steal some carries and touchdowns. We know Gus Edwards will be in the mix. But I feel pretty good about a guy who can any given week score a touchdown. We know he's going to get the ball. He's not going to be scripted out because Baltimore will run the ball no matter what. So really, really high floor at this level for a running back.
Yeah, I'm not super high on J.K. Dobbins, but like you said, at this point in the draft, it's hard to see him not, meeting this ADP. And it's hard to see, I talked about Clyde Edwards-Helaire, last year's hot rookie. Well, this year's hot rookie is Najee Harris. And if it wasn't, he's going into a great situation in the sense that he's going to be the guy in Pittsburgh. He's locked into probably, 20 touches a week. The bad thing is they have potentially the worst run blocking offensive line unit in the entire NFL, but the volume is there. I think he'll be used in the passing game at the end of the third round like this. I think that's just a great value. I know a lot of drafts he goes in the second, maybe even the early first. I just think that's too high. I like him here in the mid to late third.
And this is where the tough decisions get made. You go with a pretty safe guy like Dobbins or a risky guy like Harris, because we both said that Steelers' offensive line does not look good, but Harris is definitely guaranteed to get more touches than Dobbins on a per game basis. He's going to get every red zone look. So, the output could definitely be higher. We shall see how it plays out. And right here, I think it's time to go with a receiver. Now, a lot of people you see go CeeDee Lamb. I actually still think Amari Cooper is the wide receiver 1 in Dallas. So I'm going to go with Cooper here. I feel pretty good about him. He's one of those guys who could also have a big week any given moment. So I like his big playability. I still think he's going to be Dak's favorite target. So I'll go with Cooper.
Yeah, this is really close for me. So since you took Cooper, I'm going to take CeeDee Lamb. I could definitely see it going either way here, where Cooper remains the guy and Lamb, like, to me, it's like a 1A, 1B situation. I mean, I don't even know. Yeah, one guy might get targeted more, but they're probably going to be very close in terms of scoring, in terms of fantasy points. So for me, whatever way you want to go, I'm fine with. Having Dak Prescott there is just great for the Cowboys offense. I mean, as you can see, we drafted 3 Cowboys in the first 3 rounds. So that should show you how we feel about the Cowboys offense heading into 2021.
Yeah, definitely should have a little bit of improvement in the offensive line. Definitely an offense that you could stack. And look, at this point, you're at the end of a round. Whichever guy falls to you, maybe that's the guy you take. You don't worry too much about prioritizing one over the other. So always go for value. Don't reach too much on a guy. It's always about getting the best value at the each given spot. All right, so that's our 3-round mock. We'll be doing this every once in a while, but of course we mock constantly 3 times a week. If you want to join in on the action, it is open to everybody in the Endgame community. Check out the description in this video and of course in our channel too, and you'll find links to everything you need to know to join us and watch us live on Zoom, YouTube every single week. All right, thanks for watching.